Mental Maps is brought to you by Aruka-Well. Aruka-Well is a virtual holistic mental health service, providing psychiatric evaluations, holistic interventions, and when needed, medication management. For more information, check out Aruka-Well at www.arukawell.co. That's www.arukawell.co. Welcome back to Mental Maps. As always, I hope this finds you well no matter what season of life you're in. Today, I'm very excited to discuss this topic, primarily because I think it's something that's applicable to all of us. Whether we're living in it right now, we've definitely experienced it at some point in our life. And just from my own life and spending time with other people and some writing I've been doing lately, all of this kind of got strung together into where I was like, man, this is podcast worthy. And so I really wanted to kind of discuss this on here. And it is the concept of stress, right? I think if we meet anyone in our world now, there's always this discussion of like, I'm stressed out. I got a lot of stress going on. How's life been? It's been pretty stressful lately. Like that's kind of just part of our normal language that we use when we talk to one another many times. But what does it mean? What does it mean to be stressed? And is the stress good? Or is the stress bad? I think one of the things that we found ourselves in right now in this world of just constant information, all these different views is there's one side of the world that says, like we need more stress in our life. Stress builds resiliency and strength and we need more stress. Other people, there's this whole world of stress being, a reason for like or health and mental health issues, that it leads to all these different problems, physical and mental. And so chronic stress is leading to all these concepts of life. And if you can just remove stress, you'd feel better. And so the question I think for so many people is, what is too much stress? How do I manage the stress that I do have? And the stress that I don't want to have, how do I kind of avoid that or kind of navigate that, right? And I think what we're going to talk about today can help you navigate that a little bit. I truly believe that. And so I think to start this out or to kind of kick this off, if you will, the thing we have to do is identify what is stress. I think many times when we start unpacking one of these really pop culture kind of topics, there's these words that are really like buzzwords, right? Stress, restlessness, busyness, all these different things. And stress is one of them, right? And so I think when we say the word stress, it can mean so many different things. But let's see stress from this one view, and then we'll kind of work through that, right? So the stress view that we're going to look at is stress is pressure or tension on an object. Right? Whether that is pressure or tension that is on two material objects, like we may see with like wood or fabric or something like that, if we want to get into that world, or pressure and tension on you as a material object, right? Like you as a person, it's pressure that's happening to your body, right? Or it's pressure or tension happening to your mind. But either way, this stress is a result of the pressure or tension that is being placed on you or on something else, right? And I think a perfect example of this is exercise. I'm going to use this example a lot just because it's really easy to use, to be honest with you, and it's very applicable. But going to the gym and working out, or exercising, lifting weights, whatever you're doing, running, whatever, that is physically demanding. You're putting your body and many times your mind under pressure and tension, right? The whole goal of lifting weights is time under tension, right? And so that in itself leads to pain, discomfort, all these things. But from that, there is growth. But that pressure or tension, we would consider that in this definition, stress, right? And so that is stress. And what comes from stress many times is some form of change, right? So if I put pressure or tension on something, there is going to be a shift in that object, right? If I put enough pressure on a piece of metal, it's going to break. If I put enough pressure or tension on a piece of fabric, it's going to pop. If I put enough pressure or tension on your body, it could tear, and sometimes it can tear to where there's a true injury, right? That is pressure and tension. That is stress. And so then you may be thinking as you're listening to this, well, how does this relate to my mental health and me? So many of the things that we experience in our life, right? Whether it be stuff happening directly to us, stuff we see or hear about, stuff we, see just going down the road, that is all something, some external force that can create pressure or tension on us, on our mind. And that pressure or tension creates a change, right? If you turn on the news and you see just a really terrible event that's happening on the news, that external force can create some kind of pressure or tension, right? And that pressure or tension can lead to some kind of change, right? Many times a discomfort. And that's, I think, something that's really important is more times than not, when pressure or tension is exerted on something, right? Whether you or something else, there is discomfort from that, right? Discomfort is the opposite of comfort. And so we'd have to imagine anything that would be pressure or tension driven would lead to discomfort. And I think so many times that's what we're experiencing in our world when we say, I'm under stress, is it's really, I'm experiencing the discomfort from the external force. Now, hear me when I say this. This is really easy to kind of talk about and way harder to experience. We've all been there, right? Whether it's trying to get out the door to go to work or whether it's, some kind of, financial issue or physical health issue, whatever it is, it's really easy to be like, oh, well, that's just discomfort. And it comes with it. We'll talk more about why that's so profound here in a minute. But just to kind of give us a base level of where we're at, that's kind of what we're thinking about, right? And so within this pressure tension, it's leading to discomfort. And so that discomfort will either lead to a positive change or a negative change. So back to our exercise example, right? You could be lifting weights, that time under tension leads that creates tension, that time under that tension leads to discomfort, right? Like micro tears in your muscles or whatever that looks like, but then that leads to gaining strength and gaining muscle, right? And so the question would then be, if we know it's there and we know it can create change and even positive change, how do we know what is good stress or what is bad stress? Like, what is good pressure and tension, what's bad? Because not all pressure and tension is bad, but also not all pressure and tension is good. And I think that's where there's really two core concepts that we're going to unpack that I think can really help you leverage what you're experiencing from these external factors in your world, right? I think for stress, for the external force, for that stress to be good for you or positive for you or life-giving to you or whatever terminology we want to use, there needs to be at least one or two concepts, right? There must be a sense of control or there must be some kind of time constraint on the stressor itself. So for a perfect example, right? We know that cold plunges and sauna are very helpful for our mental and physical health, right? Like we've talked about on this podcast, you Google it, it's everywhere, right? But that is a lot of pressure and tension on your body to jump in freezing cold water, to jump into a box for 20 minutes at 200 degrees. That's a lot of pressure and tension on your body that leads to the discomfort, right? As your body's kind of adapting and experiencing that. That in itself is helpful because many times there's a sense of control, right? You're the one that decided to get in it, and then you get to decide to get out of it. And many times there's a time limit on it, right? Like I'm only going to be in this cold plunge for 30 seconds to a minute. I'm only going to be in the sauna for 15 to 20 minutes. There's two constraints on it, right? There's constraint on time and then there's control. And so by having that sense of control and that time constraint, ultimately the body can then allow itself to have the benefits of the experience, right? Because remember, the brain is constantly just attempting to make predictions and create meaning of what's happening around it. And if this is a pressure or tension that doesn't have control or there's no end in sight, the brain's not going to know what to do, which leads to fight or flight responses and the chronic fatigue and all the things that we'll talk about in a minute. So good stress has to have either some type of perception of control or some type of time constraint, right? Think about something in your life that creates pressure or tension, but it's very helpful to you, right? Whether it's going to the gym, whether it's going on a run, whether it's doing really hard work at home, or maybe even work, right? Like being involved in a really challenging project. There's pressure and there's tension in that room and there's all these things going on. We could even say that many times a flow state for working could be a version of pressure, right? And then something good's coming from that. But the reason that it can be good is either there's a sense of control or there's a sense of time constraint, right? Now, granted, as I say this, there's only so much we can control, right? And in pressure specifically, we can only manage so much and we only have so much control of it. But in this world, there's at least some version of control. In bad stress, neither of these are there, right? Like a perfect example of this, right, is a person who maybe is going to a job where the work is just endless. It just continues to build and build and build, and you never believe you're going to get that one project done, right? There's no end in sight, and you believe you have no control. There's still an external force putting that pressure or tension on you, whether it's a due date, it's a boss, it's clients, whatever. But the only difference between making it good or bad would be, is there an end goal and do I have a sense of control? You could go to the same place, same job environment, but if that maybe the people around them are very positive and that project seems like there's going to be an end control, or there's control and there's an end date, oh my gosh, now it's an experience that can be way more positive. So we've all had those times, right? Those experiences of those bad stressors, those stressors that come on, that just feels like we have no control, that feels like there's never going to be an end. And so then what does it do? It leads to what we know of in our world as stress, right? It leads to the discomfort that doesn't go away, or it feels like it doesn't go away. It leads to the adrenal fatigue, the fight or flight responses, the depression, the anxiety, the inflammation, the issues with their physical health, the increase in cardiovascular disease, all the things that kind of come from what we know of as stress is really just some kind of force putting pressure or tension on us in the absence of either a sense of control or a time constraint. And that is the key in all of this. Now, that being said, doesn't mean every external force that creates this pressure or tension is going to be helpful to you, right? We know that sometimes the only way for something to get better is to make a shift, right? The amount of people I've worked with who maybe they've been in some job and the job is just brutal, right? Like the boss is maybe very mean, or maybe there's just all these issues. And, they do every biohack you can think, and it's not until they make that shift and they do something different that it all goes away. Right. And so I'm very aware of that. I'm also acutely aware that there are many stressors that are outside of people's control. Right. There's a lot of societal stressors, things when it comes to resources and that kind of stuff that just doesn't get better because you do these little biohacks. But at the end of the day, for the basic things that we experience, many times if we can leverage some kind of time constraint on what we're experiencing, or we have some version of control in it, then we're going to feel better. So you may be thinking like, how do I find this? How do I find this with the stressor I have? If you're looking for control, it's focusing on the things that you can complete, right? So maybe you're in that project and that project seems like there's no end in sight and there's nothing you're going to do. Setting a firm objective that seems obtainable is a lot easier than just completing the project, right? It's like that old adage, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Many times in these heavy stressors and these heavy external forces, to manage that pressure or tension, you just got to find one small thing to do at a time. Like you see people who are like working through like a lot of financial issues. And if they can just get like one bill paid off, right? Or they can get one thing under control or one expense down, there's like some happiness in that, right? There's some feel good in that. There's a sense of control in that. And so that stressor doesn't seem like it's so powerful anymore. And I think to a point, that's what a version of control gives you. Once again, not that you have complete control, but if I believe I have a say in this thing, this stressor, this external force isn't as powerful as it used to be to me. The second thing would be, what does it look like to put a time constraint on it? Many times, stressors can look like there is no end in sight, right? Whether it's the financial challenge, whether it's some kind of a relational issue, it just seems like it's going to go on forever. And so I think the first step in that is being able to identify what is the one thing you want to see get better, right? Maybe not the problem itself get better, but maybe that objective that we just talked about, what does it look like to also put a time constraint on that, right? Maybe it's that I'm going to get that one bill down by this time, or I'm going to, get rid of this one negative influence in my life by this time, or I'm going to set this boundary to where I only listen to the news from this time to this time. I take a time constraint on it. And even in that moment, if it's not negatively impacting my life, I'm preventing it from negatively impacting my life later on in the day, right? So the first step would be is setting that core boundary with it and that limitation on something small. And then two, it's make big goals. Don't be afraid to say, I'm going to complete this project by this date, or I'm going to set this time frame. Give yourself a time, and don't let that time be one of those like increased pressure tensions, right? Because many times that happens. We put a time constraint that we're going to get this thing done. We're going to get this bill paid. We're going to get this project completed. We're going to, do this one thing under this one time constraint. And that generates even more anxiety, right? And that generates more pressure and more stress. So don't let it do that, but more of creating a very far out view of what you want to see it look like. And that kind of time can be way more digestible than saying 60 days from now, I'm going to have lost this weight, or 60 days from now, I'm going to have paid these bills off, whatever. Either way, you've taken this bad stressor, this external force, this force that's creating this chronic pressure and tension in your life, and given yourself a sense of control and a sense of time. Because ultimately, we all have to experience some version of pressure or tension. Without it, we cannot build resiliency. I think we've seen that in certain parts of our culture. You've seen that within certain concepts of maybe parenting or in other things where people have attempted to eliminate or really limit specifically all the pressure and tension in their life. Whether it's forced upon them or it's chosen by them, there's none. And to a point, what you see for that is a lack of resiliency, a lack of character building, a lack of strength mentally, because they're just not prepared for it, right? At the same time, the person who's under chronic stress without a sense of control and a sense of time looks identical to that, right? They're struggling to manage it. When stressors come up, they freak out. They don't have good distress tolerance, all these kind of things. And so then it just leads to higher experiences. So if you're in this place, right, if you're navigating the stressor, any type of external force that's generating pressure and tension in your life, do you have a sense of control in it? A sense of say in it? And is there a time constraint on it? If not, what does it look like for you to create this? Because no matter what you're experiencing, there is a way to navigate it. That whole adage of this too shall pass, to a point there is always these seasons. But at the end of the day, the only way we can get there is to navigate through it in a helpful manner. So many people I work with, I see that they're just, holding on, just like white knuckling life, just trying to get to the other side. And sometimes maybe that's what you need, but that's unsustainable. You just cannot sustain that. And so if you can get to that other side with feeling like you have a sense of control in that stressor, that there was a sense of a time constraint on it, you got through it, that's going to lead to that stress ability and resiliency and not adrenal fatigue and all the other things that we talk about. Stress is good. Stress is part of life. Stress is something we're going to feel. The challenge is, can you make your stressor more beneficial than it is harmful? And I think it comes from the perception of control and time. So something to contemplate, right? As you're maybe driving down the road or in your time of silence, or maybe you're meditating, whatever that looks like today, check in with yourself, right? Like, what is the stress you're experiencing? What is the pressure or tension you feel day in and day out? And with it, do you feel like it's helping you, or do you feel like it's harming you? And if it is harming you, that leads to the question of, do I have a sense of control? And is there a time constraint? And if not, how do I create that? Once again, I think that everybody navigates this in a different way. I think some people are more prone to experience stress in different ways, right? I think personality characteristics and other things, there's a lot of complexities that go in with this. But at the end of the day, from just solely stress itself, I believe this is a way to examine it and attack it. And by doing that, I believe you will feel better at navigating all of the chaos and the noise and the intensity that is what we call life right now. Remember, if you want to do get involved with some of the work that we're doing at Aruka Well, check out arukawell.co. That's my private clinical practice where we're doing a lot of this work at. We also have a newsletter there you can check out as well. But thanks for joining the show again, and try to make your stress good stress, not bad stress.